Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I just want to tell you how important it is that you're here. You are the heart and soul of the Grassroots Democrat HQ. Tonight, we're going to tell you where we've been, how we've contributed to the elections in 2023, which is really quite spectacular, what is going to happen in 2024, what our target races are, and what our youth program is all about. So this is going to be a very informative night, and we hope you'll stick with us through the whole program. So first, I want to tell you, in case you don't know, who our various leadership is and who the staff is, the most important staff members. I'm Melissa Grant. I'm the president of the Grassroots Democrats HQ. Brian Coker is our CFO. Ingrid Van Eckert is our vice president. Tamara Melzer-Levinson is our executive director. Robert Jimenez is our operations manager. Justin Kelly is our youth vote coordinator. Mana Shushtari is our executive strategist. Davis Hahn is our senior strategist. Barry Rosenbaum is our senior editor and affiliate coordinator. Andy Linden is our recruitment coordinator. Pratt Malik is our technology coordinator. We've got a lot of coordination. Then we have Pamela McAfee, our distributive organizer and community liaison, and Bridget Matthews, our distributive organizer. So if you don't mind giving everybody on the leadership a hand, that would be terrific. So just give everybody a hand because we do a lot of work. All right, now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you where we've been in 2023 and how extraordinary our contribution has been. So this is what we've done together. The first thing was in Wisconsin. In the spring of 2023, we jumped into the special election for the open seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And we helped elect Judge Janet I can't say her name, but the Democrat.
Protasewicz. We're just going to help you out for a second. Janet Protasewicz. There we go.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. And that election has national implications because they are probably going to reject the redistricting that happened that was going to be contrary to the Democrats and in favor of the Republicans. The court is also going to block or reject attempts by Donald and the MAGA Republicans to suppress the vote and to overturn next year's presidential election. Wisconsin is key in the presidential election. We played a major part in her election. We contacted 435,000 voters in the weeks leading up to the election day, which included 35,000 calls from our Organize for Democracy youth organizers to Wisconsin college students. This is something that we have found very critical in all the work that we do, is getting out the youth vote, having youth to youth. And Justin's going to tell you about that later on in the program. Then in Virginia, we helped flip the General Assembly in Virginia. We flipped the House of Delegates and we held on to the state Senate. Not only, and as a result, Governor Glenn Youngkin's MAGA agenda is dead on arrival, which was really important. The country was looking to Virginia as the first bellwether of what's going to happen in 2024, and we helped show that the Democrats can prevail. This will ensure that we have at least one southern state that is safe for women to get legal abortions. We made a total of 767,000 plus calls to Virginia voters. This is what you guys did. And we made 373,105 calls to young voters. This is going to protect reproductive rights, LGBTQ plus rights, gun control, Medicaid expansion. It's all going to be safe through 2025 as a result of these victories, which is really quite extraordinary. Let's go to the next one and what we did in Ohio. Ohio, we helped restore abortion rights in Ohio. There was the issue number 1, which enshrines the right to safe legal abortions in the state constitution. And it's also critical rights that laid the groundwork for other statewide races in Ohio, like Sherrod Brown, Senator Sherrod Brown's reelection campaign. We made their 276,014 calls to Ohio voters. That is amazing. If you add up all these calls, we're well over 1 million calls that we made in 2023. So you should be really proud of yourself for joining us. Look at those statistics. 1,482,071 phone calls made, 85 plus texts sent, 69,000 plus postcards written, 750 voters registered, and 3,600 doors knocked. That is grassroots power in action. And that's because of you and what you do with the Grassroots Democrats HQ. So now I went very fast. That's because I know we want to get through the whole program. And I'm sure we're going to share this PowerPoint on our website later. And now I want to introduce Mana Shushtari, who's going to show us a video about what we accomplished in 2023.
Hello, everybody. So good to see y'all. So many new faces, so many returning faces. And as Melissa just told us all, we accomplished a lot, but we were only able to accomplish all of that because we worked together. If you look at the chat, and you'll see folks from all over the country, literally, who have joined us over the past year or maybe over the past 5 years to help us elect Democrats everywhere. So now, as a thank you and as a celebration for all of the hard work that we've done together over this past year, we put together this video to reminisce and to really motivate us to continue this work going into the 2024 election. So without further ado, please enjoy our 2023 year in review.
I remember when the Grassroots Dems were still getting started, when it was just the first early days, and it is so encouraging to see what a movement you all have been able to build.
Last year, between canvassing, calling, and texting, the HQ made over 100,000 voter contacts in our district.
Thank you so much for the constant hustle that you had to help myself as well as Democrats throughout Virginia flip the House of Delegates blue and win the state Senate again.
You were instrumental in helping us flip the House and securing what would now be a historic win with the first Black speaker in the entire South. And that, again, was in no small part thanks to the work of the volunteers of GDHQ.
I think optimism and confidence begets more optimism and confidence, and winning is just more fun. And so the work that you're doing right now really counts, and it really matters.
We know that the most effective way of taking a voter and bringing them from being a non-voter to someone who goes and casts their ballot is that phone call or that door knock or that message that they hear from another human.
You guys really are my heroes, and people like Tamara and Bridget and Alana and Kate, they just help me take the next step, right? So I'm actually making contact with my fellow Americans.
Shit, bud. Hanging out on the couch.
What you do today can make sure that women's rights are literally come down to the last person that you call right before 7 o'clock Eastern to make sure they get in line.
All right, y'all. With that video, I hope you saw we truly mean what we say when we say volunteers are the heart and soul of our operation. Without you, that 1.6 million figure would not exist. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for helping us be victorious all throughout 2023. And we are so excited to move onwards into 2024. And before we move on, I'd like to give a huge thank you to Gus Castellanos, who put together that beautiful slideshow so that we can come together and watch everything that we have done together throughout 2023. So if you know Gus, or if you don't, please give him a shout out in the chat and give him lots of love for putting together that incredible video for all of us to enjoy. And now I'm going to kick it over to our next speaker, the incredible Tamara Melzer-Levinson.
Fantastic. Hello, everybody. First of all, this is what I'd like to do. If you are somebody who volunteered during this last year, if you volunteered and you saw yourself in the video, you did not see yourself in the video, you are a leader of a group, you are a member of a group, anything, give yourselves a pat on the back. I thank you. What it is that you have done to make democracy stronger is amazing. We're going to take a break between here and the rest of the program because I want to make an opportunity for you. I want to let you know that Grassroots Democrats HQ does not normally use our happy hours as a significant fundraiser. This is not a fundraiser because you all just came because we wanted you to. But I do want to tell you that what is happening in 2024 is going to be unprecedented. We currently have 179 people in the Zoom room. I wanted to take advantage of this, of this moment. I want to tell you that after what we did last year, we were all going to take a break. But then we started off in 2024, and you know what we saw coming? We saw a special election for New York 3 in order for us to be electing Tom Suozzi into Congress, which will be the first drop in the blue wave. That is a special election taking place on February 13th. What we also found out is that we have, and today you're going to learn about all of the different candidates that we can be supporting in California for Congress. And what we learned is that coming into the primary, which is on March 5th for California, we not only have 2 candidates that are sitting Congress members that we can help, but there are a number of candidates where they're Democrats. There are only 1 Democrat in the congressional race for the primary, which means the Grassroots Democrats HQ can support that work. And we know that when we get a voter out in the primary, that will help them to make sure that they vote in the general election. Why is that important? Because it meant that instead of us taking a break back in December, taking a break now, between now and March, we are working harder than ever. I went to the board and I said, hey guys, we need to expand the amount of work that we're gonna do in January. And the board is like, absolutely, we should do it. We have a youth program that you're gonna learn about. And I said, we need to bring on 75 students so that we can have phone calls being made by young adults to young voters between 18 and 29, and you're gonna learn about that. The board said, absolutely, Tamara, do that. And I said, don't worry. And there's like, how are you going to pay for it? I said, we're going to do it because in December, we get a year-end fundraiser and it'll be awesome. And we're going to raise as much money as we did during the last 2 Decembers. Truth is, we did not. So I'm going to challenge you between now and the end of this day of us, or this happy hour, take a moment and feel inspired. And at the end, we're going to have a volunteer opportunity. Don't worry, I'm going to ask every single one of you to volunteer for something. So look at what is happening, look at what is at stake, and figure out where you want to do that. But if you can donate $24, $240, $2,400, $5,000, you have a friend out there who can, you're like, oh my God, I want to text this link to them. Please, please do. Because here is my problem. Next week, when we start to hire these young adults to be doing this work, when we start to look at the expanse of how much work we have to do for that February 14th election and for the primary, I got to be honest, I'm $20,000 short in the budget for the first quarter. I don't expect us to get all of that here, but if I have 179 people in a Zoom room, I'm going to be honest. So take a look at what we just did last year, think about what we're going to do this year, and think about how you're going to volunteer your 24 hours of time and make your donations as well. So that was my commercial moment. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to start putting into the chat the link. If you feel inspired, donate. If you feel inspired a second time, donate a second time. But please help us out, because what you're going to learn tonight is what is at stake. I have the honor of introducing Brian Coker, who is one of the founders of the Grassroots Democrats HQ. He's also our CFO and an incredible strategist. He's actually going to be talking to us about where we stand and in 2024 and an analysis of Democrats' prospects heading into 2024. Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Tamara. Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a good night. All right, so I'm just going to start out with a quote. This is by Robert Kagan. This was a Washington Post editorial, I think in October, and he's basically saying, we need to really take seriously the possibility of dictatorship in the US. I know, I'm sorry, I'm changing the tone and kind of bringing us down a little bit. But I think we're at a point where we need to start speaking truth to power and start looking at the reality of where things stand. So Robert Kagan sounding the alarm, saying that the election of Donald Trump is an absolute possibility. We have to start getting used to it. You have to take it seriously. So next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just briefly what I'm going to talk about. So what are the stakes of the election? What is really knowable? Like what can we say about what the polls are telling us? If you look backwards at 2023, what does that say? We unfortunately have to talk about polling. If you know anything about the polling today, it's sobering. Question about how voters view the economy, which I think is a central question for President Biden's reelection prospects. And then, of course, another question is, Trump is running, essentially promising to be a dictator. Is this going to bother anyone? Is this a problem? And then I'll talk a little bit about the anti-MAGA coalition, which has been the key to the last 3 elections. Okay, so let's go to stakes. So what happens? Well, Trump has been very open with his plans. And everything on this slide is what he has said. What he has said and what there's evidence based on the people around him have been doing. This is not secret stuff. So he's assembled a team essentially to take over the government. He plans on day 1 to issue an order called Schedule F. I know it sounds very Orwellian. That's because it is, which means essentially firing about 54,000 federal workers and replacing them with loyalists. His team is already building a loyalist database. They already have 5,000 people. And they're going to put those people in key positions like the Justice Department, but also others. And their job is to essentially destroy any kind of institutional controls on executive power. So Trump has said he plans on using the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies. He plans on politicizing the military. There's some speculation that if you remember Tommy Tuberville's military holds, that what was behind that is that he was hoping to hold them until Trump is back in office so they can put the MAGA cult in charge of the US military. Military is going to be used to stifle protests. He said he's going to first put in jail and then deport every single undocumented person in the United States. He's also said that he would take over the FCC and the FTC, and has even talked about taking over the Federal Reserve. So again, this is not my paranoid fantasy. This is what he's actually said. Next slide, please. So what are the implications of this? Well, opposition to Trump could mean arrest, or let's just say intense investigation. So picture somebody like Representative or possibly future Senator Schiff, or someone like Eric Swalwell. You could see them being arrested. News outlets critical of Trump could be shut down or sued by the Department of Justice. He's threatened this before. Protests could be broken up by our military. Neighborhoods with high immigrant populations could face unbelievable amounts of intimidation and harassment. This next one scares the daylights out of me, but future elections, you could see very easily being compromised. Department of Justice could interfere in vote counting, could invalidate vote by mail, could implement very strict national voter ID laws, new forms of poll tax, just keep going. It's hard to imagine the Democrats winning another national election as long as Trump, the autocrat, is in office. It's also, it's hard to imagine Trump actually leaving office. So the view, which is mine and shared by historians, other analysts, is that American democracy would be, not could be, would be fatally wounded. Okay, so I know that's dire, but again, I don't know when else we would talk about it if not now. So how worried should we be right now? Well, fortunately, if you look at this slide, it's very, very hard to predict an election result in the January before an election, right? You see the average polling error. This is aggregated between 2024 and 2020, is around 4 points in either direction. This VIX for politics, that's a fancy way of saying volatility. Again, about 200 days before an election, you're talking about 4.5% either way. What that says is the polls now don't tell you anything. It's almost impossible to know. Next, please. Okay, so rather than talking about polls, let's talk about elections that have actually occurred. So the elections that happened in 2023, the Democrats have done incredibly well. So 30 special elections, Democrats have outperformed by 11 points. As Melissa covered earlier, Democrats did quite well in the Virginia elections. For example, in 13 swing state or House districts in Virginia, Democrats flipped 4 back. This is despite Governor Youngkin's money and influence. And even where Republicans won, their margin of victory has shrunk in Virginia. Voter turnout in Virginia from 2019, but still significantly higher than 2011 or 2015. So that's a good sign for Democrats. And again, Governor Beshear won his re-election even more comfortably than before. And then in Ohio, and actually everywhere that abortion rights have been on the ballot, Democrats and Democrat-leaning voters have just crushed it. So what does that tell you? So, okay, so this next slide gets into, well, who cares, all right? And how do special elections predict the following year's elections? This graph, I admit, is hard to read, but I'll just say what it means. It means that the party that does well in special elections tends to overperform in the next federal election. In other words, there is a correlation between special election performance and the following election. So that's a good sign for Democrats. And what it tells, there's really a significant difference between Biden's polling numbers and voting behavior. So in other words, the anti-MAGA coalition may not show that they approve of Biden, but they are voting and they continue to vote for Democrats. So that's a good thing. The other thing is abortion rights they're emerging as almost a bipartisan issue. In this country, it's about as close to something like a 65% sort of behind it. So where abortion's on the ballot, Democrats are winning. The other thing I think we could all agree on is that the media is really overemphasizing polls and underemphasizing these elections where voters are actually going out to the polls. So again, these special elections, I think it bodes well for Democrats. Next slide. All right, so how bad is Biden's current polling? It's bad. Let's just, there's really no other way to say it. The voters are giving him very low marks on the economy, and I'll talk about that next. So the part that, being minus 13 with white voters is not terribly surprising for the Democratic candidate. Only being plus white with non-white voters is bad. And this next one, that minus 17 to 18 to 39 voters, I think that polling is probably deeply flawed, but either way, it's quite alarming. I should mention Biden is leading head-to-head matches with Trump, but it's still not good. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is really the conundrum that I think has to change. And the conundrum is that the economy is actually doing very, very well, but people are loath to see it and they won't admit it. So I have these statistics. I'm not going to go through every one, but by every single economic measure you can hope for, this economy is great. The jobs, it's producing a ton of jobs. Wage growth is going up. Inflation has moderated. Home ownership is going up. Median wealth is going up. We're going after student debt. I mean, it's just, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the economy is great. So if we go to the next, but this shows you polling on the economy. And if you look at this, for example, the first thing, so they ask people in this poll, comparing today to 1 year ago, which has increased fastest or wages? 90% of people said inflation is going up faster than wages. They're wrong. Only 1 in 10 got it though. So people have a perception about the rate of inflation that is incorrect. They also think, median wealth is going down. It isn't. They think things are worse today than they were 30 years ago. They were not. They're better now. So again and again and again, Americans' perception of the economy is just not true. So why? So some theories are that the inflation of 2020 and 2021, people are still mad about it, right? Even though it's gone down, it hasn't gone down enough. The other, of course, is the media just is focused on inflation so much. That's all people talk about. The other thing is that I think people are reporting on what they think other people's financial situation is, but not their own. So, for example, 82% of Republicans who say that their own financial situation is good also say the economy is bad. So, in other words, the economy is bad for everyone except for me, except for everyone I know. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what people believe. Okay, next. Okay, so we know that the polling on Biden is bad. So what about the polling on Trump? Well, the polling on Trump's even worse. So if you look at Trump's favorability ratings, he is underwater with every single group other than white evangelical Protestants. He's underwater with white Catholics, white Americans, basically every age group. He's getting absolutely slaughtered among white college-educated Asian voters, Hispanic. So he's immensely, immensely unpopular. He's actually less popular than Biden. The media, of course, will not let you think that, but it is so. All right, next slide. So firmness of support. So despite the polls looking relatively solid, there's actually a fair amount of play, which is a good thing for Biden, which means a lot of people are saying that Trump supports. About 53% of people who are now supporting Trump said that they could change their mind. Now, Biden also has 59% of people saying the same thing, but it means there's some volatility, some decision-making left that people have to do. Okay, next. Something that is, I think, a January 6th effect, and something that's quite alarming, is the proportion of people that are comfortable with the concept of political violence. Unfortunately, that's and it's up significantly. So this slide's showing between 2021 and 2023, the percentage of Americans that say that resorting to violence is okay has gone up to 23%. 1/3 of Republicans, that's really alarming. Of course, that's only compared to 13% of Democrats. That's an interesting 20% difference. And again, white evangelical Protestants, if that's as a group, the highest, let's just say, appetite for violence. So that's, let's just say, alarming. And then support for authoritarianism. Again, Republicans at 48% is kind of a stomach churning statistic. 29% of Democrats isn't great either. But what it's showing is the degree to which Trump has really hurt us in terms of our ability to conduct political discourse in any kind of normal way. Okay, next. Okay, so now this question is, all right, if the polls are that close and Trump is saying out loud that he's going to be a dictator on day one, is anyone listening to this? And the answer is yes. People actually, if you poll them, they're not fooled by what Trump is doing. Okay, of all Americans, 57% agree that electing Trump again is a threat to democracy. 91% of Democrats, 57% of independents, and even 1 in 5 Republicans. So that's a good sign. Now, what's very odd to me is that half of Americans also think Joe Biden is a threat to democracy, and 86% of Republicans think that. I don't know how that's exactly possible, given that the man's never threatened an insurrection, broken the law, or done anything else. But nevertheless, what it shows you is I don't think Trump in particular is not fooling anybody. Okay, so what are the implications of all this? Well, if Americans are saying that they don't really like Biden a whole lot. They like Trump even less. And even prior to the media starting to really look at what a Trump presidency could look like, Americans understand that electing Trump would be a huge problem for democracy. The other thing is there's really not a correlation between not liking Biden and not voting for Democrats. So it's entirely reasonable to say people who are polling that they don't like it are going to vote for him anyway. The other thing that's, really has been the case for the last 7 years is a majority of Republicans continue to live in just a straight up disinformation bubble where they just believe things that are true that simply are not. It's not really an ideology thing. It's a fact and normal people in the world thing. The other thing that's alarming is extremism seems to be getting worse in terms of America seeing political violence as potentially justifiable and being comfortable with authoritarianism. So that isn't good. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I want to just quickly introduce the concept of this anti-MAGA voter. So the thing to remember about Biden in 2020 is that he won the 40 million Americans who did not vote in 2016 by 12 points. So again, if you look at the coalition that got Biden elected, the people that made the difference were new voters. And the people who were new to voting in the midterms in 2022, they favored Democrats by almost 13%. So this anti-MAGA coalition consists of a core number of voters who were regular Democratic voters from 2016 and earlier to this big group of 40 million voters who are newer. And those are the people that we're going to need to get Biden reelected. So next slide, next vote. So again, how important is the anti-MAGA midterm voter to the Democrats? The answer is incredibly important. New voters, again, were decidedly pro-Biden in the last election. Okay, next. Okay, so will they show up again in 2024? I think the 2023 elections are showing that they will. And if you look at the polling and the opinion polling, there's little evidence to suggest that people who voted for Biden in 2020 are going to turn around and vote for Trump in 2024. There's just not a lot of people. There's not a lot of evidence that's happening. And one of the reasons is the Republican Party and Trump, they don't have any message for anti-MAGA voters. If you voted for Biden in 2020, what are they saying to get you to change your mind? I'm going to be a dictator is not going to draw a Biden voter. I'm going to, force young girls to have abortions when they're raped is not a winning message for the anti-MAGA coalition. So Republicans really aren't talking to Biden voters at all. The other thing is, as the year goes on, Trump is going to get more and more scrutiny as a candidate. And it is very hard to believe this is going to help his standing with the average voter, right? Because people haven't really been paying attention to him. If you actually listen to what he says, A, he sounds a lot more deranged than he did before. And B, the content of what he's saying he's going to do is even more extreme. So I think that the polls are far too negative, and I think people are focusing on far too much. I think there's way too much pessimism about Biden's prospects. I think that's the last slide. All right. So what are the major risks? So the things that have me concerned, third parties, they were, at least in late November, polling around 15%. This will affect both Trump and Biden, but potentially Biden more. The younger voter effect is still concerning to Biden and the Democrats. And of course, his polling numbers with non-white voters is even more alarming. Trumpism in general, I think, has damaged the office of the president. So I'm wondering if any incumbent would have an advantage post-Trump. And the other thing I would say, sort of the corruption of the Republican Party in general. I just think cynicism, and that could lead to lack of turnout. Okay, next. was that the last slide? Okay, yeah, the case for optimism. Trump and Trumpism have lost on the ballot 3 straight times, not growing in popularity. The fundamentals of the economy are almost always decisive for an incumbent, and a strong economy in 24 can only help Biden. Again, Democrats as a party have been outperforming Biden himself. The anti-MAGA coalition, it strongly supports the Democratic vision for America. Democratic policies are insanely popular, much more popular than the party itself. With the entire party on the ballot, we have a reason to believe the Democratic leaning voters will have a reason to vote even beyond Biden. And in terms of looking at negative partisanship, which means people voting because they hate the other guy, Trump himself is an absolute gift to Democrats. People hate his guts. And in terms of motivating Democrats to vote, there's nobody that can motivate them like Trump. So as I say, the hatred of Trump is really going to be fear and loathing are like rocket fuel in terms of turning out left-leaning voters. So that leads me to believe that this is I think people are undercounting Biden's chances to be reelected, in a word. Okay, so I think, so I'm going to turn it over to Davis to talk a little bit more about the Electoral College and have more elections analysis.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brian, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Davis Hahn, and I am Senior Strategist for the Grassroots Democrats HQ. Now that we have set the scene for what the political environment looks like headed into 2024, we get to the exciting part. What are the races that we are going to be working on this year? And of course, first and foremost is the race that Brian just spent the last 10 minutes talking about, and that is the race for the presidency. President Biden and Vice President Harris running for re-election. So I just want to take a quick preview at the map going into this year. And there are 2 things when it comes to polling in presidential elections that I always remind people. The first is that polls are not predictive; they're a snapshot in time. Brian laid out some of the major reasons for optimism and how we could see Biden's polling numbers improve in the coming months. But the other thing I always remind people is we do not elect presidents on a national vote basis. We, of course, know this as Democrats. We've lost 2 elections in the past 25 years in which we actually won the popular vote, 2000 and 2016. The media loves to focus on national polls because the horse race is good for their ratings. But you can pretty much ignore the national polls. We obviously elect the president at the level of the Electoral College, and the map that you're looking at on your screen right now, these are projections from Sabato's crystal ball. There are quite a few different election forecast models out there. This one I think is pretty good, but this election is pretty much going to come down to the same 6 states that the 2020 election came down to, and those states are Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. If you're going to look at polls for the presidential race, really you only need to look at polls in those states. We don't have a lot of data out of those states so far, but what we do know is that fortunately for us, President Biden only needs to win 3 of those 6 states to get to 270 Electoral College votes and win a second term. And so many of the dynamics that Brian just talked about are especially true in those swing states. While Biden might not be doing great in those states, he's certainly not so unpopular that he cannot win them again. And Donald Trump is deeply, deeply unpopular in those states currently. So that's where we stand in the Electoral College. And I will add the caveat that this map is not a commitment on what states we are going to be working in as an organization for the presidential race. By the time the summer and the fall gets here, we're going to be working in whatever states the Biden campaign tells us that they need us most in. Of course, we know that the presidential race is not the only important race on the ballot this coming year. We also need to take back control of both chambers of Congress. We currently have a 51-49 Senate majority, and we're going to be working to defend that majority this year. The bad news is that this is not a favorable map year on the Senate side for Democrats. If you look at our target Senate seats on this map, the red states are opportunities to flip a Republican seat, and the blue states are seats that we have to defend. There is not very much red on this map. There is a whole lot of blue. So this is not going to be a year where we're looking to get anywhere close to a filibuster-proof majority. I will manage those expectations now. But it is a year where we're going to have to fight tooth and nail and devote all of the resources that we can to hang on to our Senate majority. We know how important that is, and we can only afford to lose a net of 1 seat and still keep that majority, assuming that Biden and Harris get reelected and have that tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So as we take a look at the different states in a little more depth now, the first one that we'll be working in is very familiar, I think, to all of you who have volunteered with us the last couple cycles, and that's Arizona. This will be the 3rd major election year in a row where we have a Senate election in Arizona. This time it is Kyrsten Sinema's seat. Kyrsten Sinema famously elected as a Democrat in 2018, flipped a seat that had been held by Republicans for a very, very long time. It was formerly that was not John McCain's seat, but it was still held by Republicans for many decades. Kyrsten Sinema has left the Democratic Party. She has re-registered as an independent, though she still does caucus with the Democrats. So she will not be the Democratic candidate in 2024. That candidate is going to be Representative Ruben Gallego. But this is going to be a very close race. While Democrats have won the last 3 election cycles, statewide Senate races in Arizona, they have all been very, very close races. And of course, President Biden only won this state by 0.3 of a percentage point back in 2020. So this is going to be a very close race that is going to take a ton of investment and work on our part, particularly if you have Sinema running as a third-party candidate, in which she might be pulling votes from the Democratic side, but she will probably pull some votes from the Republican side as well. She is actually very popular with Republicans because she has been so obstructionist to the Democratic agenda. And the Republicans look like they're going to put up Carrie Lake once again, who was their gubernatorial nominee in 2022, and she is just totally off the deep end and buying into all of the MAGA conspiracy theories, so not a particularly strong candidate. The next state that we're looking at is Montana. This is another state that we have to defend. We have a Democratic incumbent running, that is Senator Jon Tester. The good news is that he is one of the most popular members of the Senate in his own state. Despite representing a red state as a Democrat, he has really, really solid favorability and approval ratings. The bad news is he does have to share the ballot with Donald Trump in a state that Trump won by 16 points in 2020. And in an era where we are not seeing a lot of split ticket voting anymore, that does present a challenge. So we're really going to have to, have a lot of conversations with voters and realize that we're not going to win over all of these voters for Biden, but we at least need to win them over for Tester because we cannot afford to lose that seat. Nevada. This is a state that had vexed Republicans for about the last 20 years. It's always a toss-up state. It's always a swing state. But Republicans couldn't seem to find a way to win a statewide campaign. They finally did in 2022. They won the governor's race there. At the same time, we reelected Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. So you did see some split ticket voting in Nevada in 2022. That should be a little bit of cause for concern for Democrats heading into 2024, and it should be a wake-up call that we're going to have to invest really heavily in making sure that Senator Jackie Rosen gets reelected. Ohio.
Davis, would you mind me interrupting you for 1 second? Because it's kind of like, when special elections come around, and when a special election happens, we literally stop everything and we jump into that special election. So if you give me a moment, I'm going to introduce Nate Munson. Sorry, everybody. This is another one of those commercial interruption moments. We have a special election coming up for New York 3 that will be taking place on February 13th. And I'm going to introduce Nate Munson, who is the individual that the Grassroots Democrats HQ has been working with on a daily basis. We are helping to be supporting their phone banking, recruiting into it, making sure that those phone banks are running smoothly. And we are really lucky. Not only do we have a special election that we get to help work on, not only do we have a special election that will be the first drop in the blue wave for 2024, but like a special election where you drop everything and you do it, we actually have the candidate who's walked in the door. Nate, can you take a moment, please, and introduce? And thank you so much for being an amazing partner that we get to work with all the time.
A pleasure. Thank you, Tamara, and thank you everyone on this call from the Grassroots Democrats HQ, all the members and staff. I just want to take a second to introduce the former congressman and, God willing, our future congressman from New York 3, Tom Suozzi. Has been a fantastic person to work with. He's here right now. Congressman, would you like to say a few words to the Grassroots Democrats HQ, who've been phone banking for you, doing some fundraising as well?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you. This is an amazing looking group, almost over 100 people on this call. So Nate's told me all great things about you. And I think Nate must have paid the person who introduced him to say what a great job he's doing. So I got to give him a pat on the back for doing such a great job on my behalf. So this is a very tough race I'm in. We've got a very, very tough seat. Republicans have been winning everything on Long Island and in Northeast Queens. And I can win this race. I've got 90% name recognition. My opponent has much lower name recognition. She's refusing to debate, which is weird when you have, a candidate like me who's well known. I'm usually the one who says I don't want to debate, but I'm agreeing to every debate, and she's not agreeing to any debates. Very quickly, I'm trained as a lawyer and a CPA. I was the mayor of my hometown for 8 years. I was the county executive of Nassau County for 8 years. I was in Congress for 6 years. I ran for governor in 2022 and didn't run for re-election. I lost the race for governor, but now I'm back to run for this seat at the request of a lot of my colleagues from Washington, D.C., and I'm excited to go back into public service, but I need your help. The Republicans have been winning every seat. As I said, I've got three major components of my district. The town of Oyster Bay, our town supervisor lost 61 to 39 in the last election in November. Town of North Hempstead, we lost 55 to 45. Northeast Queens, a Trumper won 60-40. It's a very tough seat. We have a Democratic registration advantage, but the Democratic brand is in a lot of trouble out here on Long Island and in Queens. I won't go into all the reasons as to why. But my polling is very good. I've raised about $3 million. I've got a great air campaign going on with television and mail and digital, but I need a stronger ground campaign. And we've teamed up with a lot of partners. I've been endorsed by all the labor unions. They're working really hard on my behalf. I got endorsed by all the environmental groups today. All the good government groups have endorsed me. Every traditional Democratic group you can think of has endorsed me. We're very united across the spectrum to win this race, but we need your great work that you've been doing with postcarding and phone calls. And I just want to say thank you to everybody here. So I'll stop talking because I know that you got a lot of other things to cover in your presentation. But thank you so much. I am really very, very grateful to all of you.
Thank you.
And if we win this race, it'll set the tone for all of 2024, and we'll make Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House. Thanks very much, everybody.
We are so happy to have you here. And I want everybody to notice, literally, Tom Suozzi is in the car in between events, and he literally wanted to come on and see 173 people that are willing to be working on his race as the first drop in the blue wave. We are so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for all your good work and trying to save our country. We appreciate you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you. Wonderful. We are going to move on now to bringing it back to Davis Hahn. Davis Hahn, who is our senior strategist, is going to continue talking to us about all the pieces of the electoral work that we're doing for the Senate. Go ahead, Davis. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tamara, and just want to say a thank you again to former representative and soon to be representative again, Swazi, for joining us and reminding us the stakes of that election coming up, because like he said, that really is going to set the tone for the rest of 2024. Where I left off was a state that we already talked about a little bit tonight, and that's Ohio. Senator Sherrod Brown is running for re-election. This, similar to Montana, is a state where he's going to have to win some split ticket voters. This is a state Trump won by 8 points in 2020. Trump is going to be heavily favored to win Ohio again. Gone are the days where it's a bellwether presidential swing state. That being said, Sherrod Brown is still very popular with a lot of those white working class Rust Belt voters who have migrated to the Republican Party in the era of Trump. And so we're going to have to fight tooth and nail to get him reelected in 2024. A case for optimism, of course. We did just win the issue 1 election this past year in Ohio. Abortion is obviously going to be a big issue once again in 2024, and I really do think that victory helped lay the groundwork for victory in this Senate race in November. Pennsylvania is a state that is, most forecasters do not expect Republicans to actually win this race. Senator Bob Casey is very popular among his constituents. He does have bipartisan appeal. I would expect him to get some split ticket votes as well. That being said, because this state was so close in the presidential election in 2020, and it figures to be just as close in 2024, it is not a state that we can afford to take for granted. We will obviously be doing work in the state for the presidential campaign, so that's going to overlap with our efforts to make sure that Senator Casey gets reelected, because that is not a seat that we can afford to lose. All right, let's talk about Texas. There was one red state on that map that I showed you that is a golden opportunities for us to flip a seat in 2024, and that state is Texas. This actually happens to be my home state. I was born there, but I do not claim their politics whatsoever, at least historically. They have a chance to correct the record now. But Senator Ted Cruz is up for re-election. Of course, we all know he almost lost. We almost got him out of office back in 2018. Beto O'Rourke ran a very strong, positive campaign that saw unprecedented Democratic turnout, at least in modern American politics, in Texas. Senator Cruz is not popular. Even Republicans do not like him very much. So he is vulnerable. And Texas has been trending blue. It's a state that Trump only won by about 5 points in 2020. 15 years ago, that would have been unthinkable that Texas was that close in a presidential election. So this is probably Democrats' best opportunity to try and flip a seat from the Republican column into the Democratic column in 2024. Most likely, Representative Colin Allred will be the Democratic candidate. I personally believe he will be just as strong, if not stronger, of a candidate than Beto O'Rourke was back in 2018. Another state that's more similar to Pennsylvania in that I don't think folks necessarily expect that Republicans are actually going to be able to pull it off is Wisconsin. This particular Senate seat has actually been Democratic since 1952. Senator Tammy Baldwin has served 2 terms now. She's running for a 3rd term. She is very popular among her constituents, at least as popular as one can be in a swing state in our current age of polarization. That being said, this was one of the closest states across the country in 2020 and in 2022. You did see some split ticket voting in 2022 where we reelected Governor Tony Evers, but very, very narrowly lost the Senate race. Mandela Barnes lost to MAGA Senator Ron Johnson. So all of those close election results remind us that we have to pay attention to this race in 2024. We can't take it for granted. And once again, it will overlap with our efforts for the presidential campaign there as well. So those are the Senate races we're going to be working on. Then, of course, we know we need to flip the House. So in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues Mana and Robert to introduce our California House races that we're working on. But really quickly, I do want to just talk about why the focus on California. Some of you who are not in California might be wondering that yourself. Well, Democrats need to net 5 seats. As of now, need to net a 5-seat gain across the nation. Hopefully we're going to win in New York on February 13th, and that number will only be 4. But if you look at this map, the red districts are districts that we are hoping to flip. There are 5 red districts right on that map that are districts that Joe Biden won in 2020 that are currently represented by Republicans who are out of step with the values of the voters in those districts. So we have a golden opportunity right here in California to get those seats we need to win back the majority. So to talk about those races in more detail, I'm going to turn it over to our operations manager, Robert Jimenez, and our executive strategist, Mana Shustari.
Hello, everybody. Make sure that my audio is good. So we're going to start off our presentation on the House races with CA9. CA9 is a seat where we want to defend Representative Josh Harder. This seat is located primarily in the Central Valley and the East Bay area. And we know that CA9 is a purple district that has recently been turning blue. We know that Representative Josh Harder won this seat in 2018 as part of the Blue Wave. And we want to make sure that he holds on to this seat. During the last cycle, this was one of the last seats to be called. So we know that this is going to be a big battleground for us here in California. The National Republican Congressional Committee announced that CA9 is one of their 37 targets during 2024. So we want to make sure that we do not let go of the seat and that we put all our efforts in. And we have lots of opportunities that are going on in this area. And I'm going to turn it down to Mana.
All right, y'all. So our next race is California's 13th. It's located right in the heart of the Central Valley. And for those of y'all who know me, I am from the Central Valley. So I am especially passionate about making sure that we flip these Central Valley seats blue or defend the ones that are already blue. So this district in particular was one of the most competitive districts in the entire country last cycle. We lost the seat by just over 560 votes. 560 votes. Internalize that number, okay? And in 2020, President Biden won the communities that now make up California's 13th by an 11-point margin. So this is a seat that we can most definitely take back and flip later this November. So with high Democratic turnout in 2024 due to the presidential election and Congressman Duarte, who is an extreme MAGA radical Republican, this is truly a prime opportunity to flip. Our candidate here is Adam Gray. He's a former assembly member. He's very well known in the district, and Grassroots is all hands on deck to help flip this seat. We're going to help with voter registration, targeting those college campuses, and also making sure that we're doing extensive outreach on the phones and on the doors through Election Day.
And now we're on to CA22, where we want to flip the seat and get David Valadao out of office. This district is located in the southern part of the Central Valley near Bakersfield. And we know that we want to elect Rudy Salas to the seat. Rudy Salas ran last cycle and he lost by just 3,000 votes. So we have to know that we have to ramp up voter registration efforts and we have to target communities in that area, both Spanish speaking, English speaking, and a lot of different communities in the area. Rudy Salas has been an assembly member in the area, and we know that a lot of people already recognize his name, so we have to make that extra push to get him on through 2024. And this seat was won by President Biden in 2020 by 13 points, so we know that this is a very winnable seat.
Moving on down to LA County, the only red seat representing LA County in Congress right now, we are trying to flip CA27 and get MAGA extremist Mike Garcia out of office so that we can elect George Whitesides. So this district is comprised of the Antelope Valley, Santa Clarita Valley, and North San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles County. And again, this is one of our best opportunities to flip a Republican seat in 2024. So President Biden won this district by about 13 points in 2020. And since then, the incumbent, Mr. Mike Garcia, has consistently voted in strict party line with the MAGA extremists, including to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. In a district that President Biden won by 13 points, this is a seat that we can definitely flip in 2024. So we are supporting a new candidate this cycle, George Whitesides, for this general election. Former Assembly member Christy Smith declined to run again, but she has endorsed George Whitesides already. And again, this is one of our best opportunities to flip a seat. Again, the only Republican seat representing LA County, so that we can help put the gavel back into to Hakeem Jeffries' hands.
And then we move on to CA 41, which is my home district. This district is encompassed by Riverside County. It includes the Inland Empire and the Coachella Valley. In 2022, Will Rollins ran in this district and we supported him. And he was and Ken Calvert lost his seat, Ken Calvert won this seat by 5 points, which is the slimmest amount of points that he's won by in his 30-year career. So we know that, I mean, they're pouring a lot of money into the campaign, and we've been on the ground since the start of the summer. We've been doing voter registration, going to the colleges, talking to young people. We're getting ready to knock on doors. We've been doing phone banking, and we know that this is a really great opportunity for us to flip this seat after 30 years of Ken Calvert.
And now moving into Orange County, we are trying to flip CA 45, which is currently represented by Republican Michelle Steele. So this district is located entirely in Orange County and was highly competitive in 2022 because Congresswoman Steele won re-election by less than 5 points. But this district voted for President Biden by 6 points in 2020, so that the 2024 electorate should be more favorable for Democrats. There is not a singular Democratic nominee yet, so our work in this district is very open, but this is, again, one of our best opportunities in California to flip a Republican seat in 2024. And I do want to highlight last cycle, we made literally hundreds of thousands of voter contacts in this district, and we're going to continue on to that work moving into November.
And then with CA 47, we are going to defend the seat. This is an open Democratic seat that is currently represented by Katie Porter. Last cycle, we had hundreds of thousands of voter contacts, calls, youth, canvassing. And this cycle, we've been doing voter registration throughout the community colleges, the universities. We've been doing door-to-door voter registration. And we know that Katie Porter won the seat by just 3 points last cycle. So even though this is a Democratic seat that we're holding on to, we know that we really have to defend and we really have to get out there and make sure that voters vote Democrat in this next election.
And finally, in California, we are, of course, going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that we re-elect Congressman Mike Levin, who's been a champion for Democratic priorities in Congress. So this district is predominantly South Orange County and North San Diego County. And this was one of the most competitive districts in 2022 because Congressman Levin won re-election by just a 5-point margin. He was first elected in the class of 2018 during the Blue Wave, where he flipped a longtime Republican district that was nearly identical to the current CA 49, but still includes more registered Republicans than Democrats. And as we know, the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, has announced CA 49 as one of the 37 Democratic seats that it's targeting this cycle. And they have been doing everything they can to make sure that they're mobilizing Republicans. So, of course, the Grassroots Democrats HQ is doing everything we can to mobilize all Democrats. We've been canvassing in this district since over the last year, and we will continue to do so, and as well as phone banking and, of course, text banking. This is another seat we simply cannot afford to lose if we do hope to win back the House this November. And now I'm going to kick it over to Tamara Levinson, who's once again going to share a bit about Tom Suozzi.
Hello, everybody. Wow. So first of all, can we just take a moment and realize that we have an incredible team? If you didn't notice yet, all the people that have been speaking so far have been different leaders within the Grassroots Democrats HQ. You have seen people of all ages. You have seen people who live in a variety of different places. And later, when I'm talking a little bit more in the chat, I'm going to make sure that all the different leadership that is in our Zoom room today has a chance to raise their hand. I do want to take a moment. Wow, were we lucky? We actually had Tom Swazi. Let's just repeat how we actually pronounce that, because many of you in a moment are going to start to volunteer for Tom Swazi. He literally came here in the middle of a car ride from one event to another. This is an open seat that is taking place in New York. The key communities are the Northeast Queens, the North Shore, Long Island. In 2020, this was a Biden +8 district. George Santos was asked to vacate and leave that seat. And I want to tell you, Tom Swazi literally is a former representative of the district that is slightly changed. So he has very good name recognition. So now we're going to switch over to the next screen, which is going to start telling you about the volunteer. Oh, actually, in a moment, I'll be talking about the volunteer opportunities. What I want to do now is I'm going to go off screen, and I'm going to have the honor of introducing Justin Kelly. Justin Kelly is the Youth Vote Coordinator for the Grassroots Democrats HQ. He also is our field manager. He's going to talk to you about all the young adults that are working with us now.
Hello, everybody. It's great to see all of you. Thank you for being here. Really quickly before I start, we have at least like a dozen fellows from our incredible fellowship program across the country here tonight. So if you're a fellow and you're here, please raise your hand, put your name in the chat, and let us know where you're coming from. But I will go ahead and get into it. So we clearly, as you can see, have had an incredible year in the youth organizing space. In 2023, we were able to make over 448,000 calls to young voters across the country in our key races in Wisconsin and in Virginia. We also sent 71,309 texts to young voters in Virginia that are aged 18 to 29. In our voter registration canvassing program, our fellowship program, and our Organized for Democracy program combined, we were able to train 134 organizers across the country. Our incredible California voter registration leaders and canvassers helped register over 750 voters in college campuses across the state. And they also additionally knocked on almost 700 doors. And we could not have accomplished any of this without the help of some really incredible youth partners with groups like Blue Future, Voters of Tomorrow, High School Democrats of America, and many, many other groups as well. And then if you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So these are just some highlights of all of our 3 key youth programs that we have. So for our canvassing and voter registration, this cycle, the HQ has hired and trained 30 students throughout Southern California to go knock on doors and lead voter registration events on college campuses in our target California congressional races. We've knocked on nearly 700 doors, helped register over 750 voters, and we're really excited in 2024 to start working to expand this youth voter registration program in the Central Valley and in CA13, CA22, and CA9, while also continuing to do that work in CA27, CA41, and all of our Orange County districts. We also have our Organized for Democracy program, which in 2023 hired 78 organizers across the country who made over 118,000 calls to young voters who were 18 to 29, which was super critical in helping us win in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, as well as helping turn the Virginia state legislator blue. So we're about to launch our 3rd cohort for this cycle. Like Tamara was mentioning earlier, we are trying to hire a lot of students, 75 students, so we can cover the New York special election race, as well as calling our California primary congressional races, where these organizers are gonna make approximately 10,000 to 11,000 calls each week to young voters. And then after that cohort, we're gonna do an additional 2 cohorts of 50 students, where we're gonna be targeting our California congressional races and some key Senate races across the country as well. And then if you can move to the next slide, please. And then another really exciting project we were able to work on with our young fellows this past year, and that we're continuing to work on, was a special project with the Biden campaign called the Biden Ballot Access Project. We were able to help verify over 4,000 signatures for the Biden campaign to make sure he got on the ballot in all 50 states and the US territories. And we were able to help verify these signatures in 6 different states, including Delaware, Mississippi, Montana, New York, Ohio, and Washington. Our fellows were so essential in this work, as well as just all the other work that they do, basically powering the day-to-day operations of the HQ. So we're really grateful for our fellows, really grateful for all the incredible young organizers that are helping us get out the youth vote, and really excited to do more incredible work in the youth space in 2024. So I can pass it back now to Tamara so she can tell you a little more about all the volunteer opportunities we have this year.
Wow. Okay, first of all, can we just give a huge round of applause? Justin Kelly came onto our team just this year about how many, I always like to say 2 weeks ago, but Justin, how long have you been here with us?
It's been almost like 6 months now.
I know, and every time I say it's been 2 weeks ago. I have to tell you, the youth program is the backbone of what it is that we do. I'm going to keep talking now so that all of you can find out, how can I get involved? What can I do? How can I volunteer? But while you're doing that, we're going to put the link in there again for donations. I do want to tell you that program that Justin was just talking about, that is the program that he's going to look at me sitting in this office that I'm currently sitting in about 4 days. And he's going to say, Tamara, how many total people can I actually admit to the program? So Justin, I'm doing my best. Volunteer opportunities. We're going to click on to the next one because we're going to be putting 2 links in the chat now. We're going to be putting in a link to donate, and we're going to be putting a link into what can you do. So the very first one, Tom Swazi. We need to get him elected. And what it means is we have to call people and let them know on the telephone that there's an election happening. This is what I want to make sure you know. When we are making phone calls every single day, and the Grassroots Democrats HQ is helping to be staffing all of those phone banks. Pamela McAfee is another staff member that is here. She is a distributive organizer. Every one of you who is in the chat, in the room right now, do me a favor, just give yourselves a shout out, because if you are helping to be leading these phone banks, please let us know. Grassroots Democrats HQ every day at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern time, weekdays, are running a phone bank with the Tom Swazi team. We are training, we are helping volunteers. We leave no volunteer left behind. On Saturdays and Sundays, we are doing this at, get me right there, Robert is sitting right across from me. It's at 4 o'clock Eastern time, 1 o'clock Pacific time. Links are in the chat for volunteering. You know what else we're doing? We have a youth phone bank that is being led by one of our fellows. Her name is Lily Howe, and she lives in Ohio. And she has been doing a youth-led phone bank on Saturdays. And we are partnering with Voters of Tomorrow, and we will soon be doing youth-led phone banks with young adults from across the country. In addition to that program that Justin just said, he's actually leading, which will bring on 75 young adults to call youth voters in 18 and 29. One more thing that we're doing, because what we know is this is a district that has a very large percentage of voters from the South Asian community and the Chinese community. We just created a phone bank that will happen once a week with the AAPI community, and we are partnering with South Asians for America. What else can you be volunteering with? CA 41. You just learned about Will Rollins. Will Rollins can take CA 41 by storm, but what it takes is us volunteering and doing that work. Grassroots Democrats HQ has been engaging with the Riverside Democratic Party for about 4 months already, 4 or 5 months, 7 months is what Robert is telling me. By the way, Robert is right across the table from me in this small office. And we have been recruiting precinct captains in order to be building a volunteer pool right in CA 41. So if you want a phone bank, do that with us. The next screen of volunteer opportunities is fantastic. Canvassing. You just learned about several candidates that we are working with. So this is what I want to tell you. We need to flip CA 27. That is an area that is just north of Los Angeles. And we are doing canvassing there, both in the San Fernando Valley, the Santa Clarita Valley, and the Antelope Valley. If you are in the House today and you are somebody who actually has been canvassing in those areas, or you are somebody who lives in those areas, give yourselves a shout out. Now, what else do we have to do? We have to hold on to Mike Levin. That is down south of Los Angeles. You go into San Diego County and into Orange County. We have been door knocking there ongoing for 6 or 7 months already. And then we want to be holding on to CA 47. That is the seat that is being vacated by Katie Porter because she is running for another office, but we can hold on to that seat. We are not working on any particular candidate there, but what we are doing is door-to-door voter registration with the Orange County Democratic Party. Next screen, what else are we doing? Grassroots Democrats HQ realized that voter registration was key in all of our California districts. But what we found out is that people needed a little bit of extra help. There were not voter registration drives with anybody who was staffing them. So the Grassroots Democrats HQ partnered with our great friends at Field Team 6, and we started to engage our young adults. Our young adults started to go out there, and they were leading voter registration drives in CA 45 in Orange County, CA 47 in Orange County, in South Orange County, and up in CA 27, which is where George Whitesides is. We're also expanding our voter registration efforts into CA 22, which is where Rudy Salas is, CA 13, which is where we want to bring Adam Gray, and CA 9, which is where Josh Harder is. There is no lack of an opportunity to be doing volunteerism with the Grassroots Democrats HQ. One more slide is postcarding. Postcarding. Now, for those of you who are like, Tamara, what are you talking about all this canvassing and voter registration? I don't live in California, but you know that California is the space where we need to come through the entire state of California to be taking back the House. If you can't go out and canvass and door knock with us and do voter registration in person, you know what you can do? You can phone bank with us. You can also be writing postcards. Grassroots Democrats HQ, because we work on the coordinated side, is working with the campaigns. When we do that here in California, your postcard is actually being combined with a door knock as well as a phone bank. And when you do a postcard with the Grassroots Democrats HQ, that is a combined effort with the actual campaign. The power of the postcarding that we're doing is huge. We are getting the scripts, we are getting the universes directly with our partnering campaigns. So please take a look in the chat. If you are not already postcarding and you want to, we are the people to be doing it with. The next slide is a stay in touch slide. I want you to take down this information, but don't worry, you don't have to actually take it down because we're going to be sending it out to you.